Okay, so I scheduled this meeting with all of us because we are either directly responsible for the release post for 12.8 or that we're shadowing people who are responsible for the release post for 12.8. And after meeting with Fabian and talking with James a little bit, they mentioned that this is a helpful step in the process to kind of get everybody on board and talk about who's responsible for what, and if people, like I'm assuming William at least has done the release post in the past, so maybe you've experienced some of the what's gone well and what's not gone so well, as well as to talk about the release post does go out on a Saturday this month, so I wanted to make sure that everybody just could allot that time, and then go over some questions in the agenda. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sounds
Cool.
great.
So I had the first item on the agenda, which is just roles and responsibilities. So for me, this is all new. This is my first release post since I've started at GitLab. I, being the product manager, I think I see my role as creating the release post merge request, as well as the retrospective merge request. Kind of pinging people in Slack every day, asking them to update their release post items and content, and being able to help people, for especially new PMs that maybe haven't gone through the process of creating the release post items yet, if they need help. And then providing sort of like a first level pass of the content, making sure that it says why we're building what we're building, and why it's exciting. And then assembling the release post in general. So like actually writing the introduction, working to select the MVP, and making sure that there's no spelling errors, that the links all work, that the images are resized, all of those things. Ooh, that's still made me a little nervous just saying it all out loud, but
And
So,
I have a quick question for you. So you've been here close to a year and you've never actually been part of the random selection to run this.
that's right. Yeah, I started in
That's
April of last year.
I mean, it's truly random then. Haha.
so I guess I've been at GitLab two years and a quarter. I think I can safely say I have led the release post more than anyone else at the company.
Wow.
Because although I've never done the PM role, for about 8 months, my first 8 months, I did every release post from a PM. And then since there's fewer PMMs, I've showed up in the rotation far more often. So I've done a lot of release posts. I would say, Tim, that's probably a pretty good summary. I linked the handbook pages, have you read the handbook pages on the release post authorship?
Yes, but I need to study them a bit more.
Yeah, totally. It's a ton of information to consume for like, I'm doing this job for 1 month and then may not have it for a year or again.
Right.
The nutshell of it, the split between the PM and the PMM is the PM is responsible for all of the structural. So the things like you mentioned, like make sure the images are resized, like make sure there's no merge conflicts, make sure everybody else has contributed their content. So it's like a wrangler. And then, yes, like your name goes on it. So you have like the final say on what the words are. And then the PMM says me for this post, I write the intro, and that's kind of my document in the handbook is the PMM writes the intro and picks the top 3 features.
Oh, cool.
In practice, every time I've done it and every time I've seen my colleagues do it, that's a collaborative effort on what the top 3 features are, but the PMM should drive that. And those are outlined in that handbook page. And again, it's a ton to consume like everything else in the handbook. But in this case, yeah, it's like, I'm just doing this one time. I have to like learn everything really, really quickly. The other thing that's a bit goofy about this is there is a very nice, very well documented, very long handbook page on authorship, but then there is also the MR template itself. And that's 2 sources of truth and not 1. So what I have seen often happen is the MR template is out of sync with what the handbook says. So it can be difficult to know which one is right. And I fully anticipate this group coming to a place where the handbook says to do X, the template says to do Y, which one should we do? And then we'll just have to make a call as a group, or, figure out why each one is in there, which one's most recent, that kind of a thing.
That makes a lot of sense. And so when do you start like doing that in earnest? Like, when does your piece of the process kick off? When will you think about the intro and top 3 issues?
So candidly, as a PMM, I have begun pushing that off more and more and more and more. The last 3 to 4 release posts I've done, at least one feature that I spend a not insignificant amount of time like wordsmithing and researching and like writing an intro for got bumped out of the release. The last one I did, my entire intro, every single feature was bumped out of the release. So candidly, I have started pushing that off more and more and more, because we have, as a product org, have gotten just more like down to the last minute, less confidence. And so I candidly have just pushed that off, because you don't want to do rework.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not efficient. All that's to say is, and I'm documenting my PMM process in more detail. It's pretty well documented, although I don't think it's documented from a timeline perspective. And it might be in there's probably, if I recall, in the template, there are dates like the PMM should do X by date Y. I 100% did not hit that date last time.
Okay.
And like, even writing my content after the date that was in the template, I still had to 100% rewrite it.
Whoa.
So yeah.
Will you review the individual release post items and check that content as well?
No. So the way that goes is, the current model for that, and Tim, you and I have probably worked this, is each individual PM is the DRI for their blocks. And before they merge those, they should request like technical writing and product marketing review. Now we have a very, like, compared to other companies in our industry, we have an extremely, extremely high PM to PMM ratio. I don't even know what it's at these days, but every PMM on the team has many, many PMs to support. And so there's candidly not enough bandwidth to review every single release post feature from a PMM perspective. So what I say is the PM is a DRI. You've gotten the emails from me, Tim, where I say, like, can you please stack rank? And I'll make sure, or if there's like, if a package feature is like number 1, I will 100% make sure I review that feature block as a PMM. But often I don't review the feature blocks at all. And it's up to the PM to say, like, hey, I really need some messaging help, or this is a very important feature, etc. So from my perspective, your role as the release post author is to make sure that everyone else contributes the content. Probably different release post authors have different appetites for like reviewing word for word every single thing. To Franusha's point, there's some spelling errors and things that have come out. So if I were you, I would maybe rely on Marcin and potentially maybe ping some folks in content marketing to ask if they can do like, hey, can we just get another set of eyes to do like a spell check on this?
Well, on that note, and I know we're kind of jumping ahead right now, Sid and Scott were thinking, they brainstormed this and passed it on to me, that maybe we should consider, having someone else from product be responsible for going through and really just doing all the copy editing and the link testing. I know we want to do our round table so that everyone kind of talks about their role. So I'm wondering if we should table this, hit pause and go back to our round table and then kind of dig into this deeper. And I'm happy to continue the round table since this kind of goes into what my role is and why I'm here joining this. Does that help? Is that okay, Tim? I don't want to.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's keep, yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay, cool. So going back to our roundtable, so I'm Farnoosh. I'm heading up product ops for GitLab as part of product management, which is a new role here at GitLab. I'm joining here because part of my role, optimizing the release post process and figuring out how we can get better at this as we scale is kind of a priority for my role right now. So my hope is to be somewhat not invasive and just shadow, but the reality of it is there are a lot of requests rolling in to start optimizing the release post because it's a lot of pressure on all the teams involved, the things that are kind of like not going smoothly, content coming in late, typos, who's responsible for what, so many cooks in the kitchen that I may end up being not just a shadow for iteration on future versions, but really giving you guys a hand and real-time suggestions and rolling up my sleeves and helping wherever I can. So that's what I'm here for. And so I'll be throwing in some suggestions and I'm here to support this whole process in real time, but then work with you guys to figure out what can we make better now? And then what do we want to figure out how to make better in the next release post so that I can keep carrying that forward with the next iteration.
Cool. It sounds great. Yeah, for spelling and stuff too, I'm a big fan of the Hemingway app actually, because it tells you like when you have compound sentences that may be hard to read and spelling errors and things like that. So I was thinking of putting a lot of stuff like basically everything into Hemingway and doing a round of feedback there as well.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. James, and again, not to jump ahead because I want to finish our roundtable, but James did mention that there's actually, and we do have like a grammar and spell checker. Maybe we don't know about it and we're not using it. And he also mentioned that we have some kind of automated thing that goes through and checks for broken links. But I'll hit pause there because I know that's later in the agenda and we'll figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. So I'd love, because I'd love to get Marcin to, because have you gone through the release post before? And yeah, if you could jump in.
No, I haven't. I'm in my 4th month in the company, and no, so I'm still a newbie, and I'm at the point of being kind of assigned to a stage, but as a trainee tech writer. And starting with 12.9, I'm going to be the assigned tech writer for Plan. But no, so I'm here to learn how to do it. And well, the way I understand my role is that, especially closer to the end of the process, is when the structural check happens, and then I jump in, making sure things fit together. But I am completely on board on, starting to work on the copy as soon as possible, so that we have time for people who come in super late, as they do, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense. And the thing that I want to do is I'm really concerned about waiting until the last minute for each piece. So like I'm meeting with James tomorrow. One thing I'd like to do with him is I've already merged a couple of my release post items. I'd love to just walk through the process with him and just say, okay, well, now that these are merged, can we pretend to put together a mini release post, or actually just start the assembly and see what the process would be that he recommends? So with this way we see like, this is how you merge it. This is the first time I've had merge access for .com. So make sure that works smoothly. And then from there we could build on top of that. And then it sounds like there's always one more thing, or in this case, like many more things, where in the end we have a bunch of people that jump in and review copy and spell check. So I think the more we could minimize that risk, that would be better. And it sounds like maybe Sid is saying he doesn't want to necessarily be involved with that, but I'm also reading into that him saying he doesn't want there to be spelling errors or link errors or any of those issues as well. So we just, if we remove him from the process, we need to make sure we do a really stellar job of it.
I mean, here's the thing. He is going to be looking at this regardless. So I think it's making sure we get to a place that when he looks at it, which he will, he's like, wow, like I found zero, typos this time. I found zero broken links. So it would be really cool, I think, if we accomplish like two things that I think would be huge in this release post is no broken links and typos, and people getting their content in 100% on time. Because my understanding is that every release post, like the deadline for all the PMs getting in their content, the release post items is missed. With James's, he said 2 days prior to the release post going live, 80% of the content was there, so 20% was missing. So I think if those were like our two goals that we could accomplish, like how can we do this, and then how can we replicate this? It could be pretty cool. And I think part of that is going to be getting to the pain point of why aren't the PMs submitting their content, which I can help try and do. Tracy, have you chatted yet? Have you had a chance?
Other than about my flowers, no. I'm a senior PMM for regulated industries, and I've actually shadowed once to do the release post with John before, but next month I'll be leading it. So I'm here with William to try to, and of course I picked the best month, right, to do it, thinking, oh my God, we're at contribute. So I don't know how I'm going to manage all of this. This is something new. So bear with me, but that's what I'm here to do. It's just shadow.
Cool. Cool. I just wanted to make sure we weren't skipping over yet.
Well, one other important thing too, that's a very gorgeous rug you have.
Oh, it's funny. I get that a lot. Quick aside, this was a housewarming gift. It's a vintage Persian rug. It's a housewarming gift from my parents. And there's a story there that I'll maybe tell you guys at some point at Contribute, because it's quite the story of how I had to get it to my home.
Well, love it. Where are you? I'm sorry.
So currently, I'm based out of San Francisco, but I also have a home in Denver, which is where I am for the next couple weeks.
Okay.
I'm trying to get a little skiing in. And so this rug is specifically in Denver, and it was quite the story getting it here from San Francisco. Back over to you, Tim. All right. Back to you, following your agenda, because it's a good one.
Okay. So just if I can chime in for two items. Tim, in your meeting with James, anything that you learn that's not in the handbook, can you add an MR?
Yeah.
Good idea.
I have an MR open for like the retrospective, which comes with opening up the regular release post MR, and so I'll be adding items to that. It may not all get done right away, but I'll try and add things as soon as possible.
I do know that I think Fabian may have started this. He just had like a running Docker running issue. And as things came up, he just added it to that. That might be a good way to go as well.
Yeah, I have, exactly. That's what I'm doing.
And then the only other one I wanted to chime in, I'm going to hand it back to you, Tim, is for Noosh on the topic of goal of no typos. I recommend making that more specified because there's so much churn in content.
Yeah.
It's very hard to ever say like, and now this is done.
Right.
Like, let's do a spell check on it, because then new content comes in and then clearly that could have typos in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the tricky part is that we're not locking in the content. Honestly, I think if we locked in the content by the actual proposed deadline, right? Which is, I think, like, what is it, 5 days prior to going live, something like that, if I recall.
It's actually supposed to be on the 10th. All the release post items are supposed to be approved by done by the product manager and approved by PMMs and technical writers.
So, like, if that happened, and I don't know if you saw, I put a plug in the issue, not the issue review. I'm getting my pilots mixed up. In the channel saying, hey, PMs, and I also gave it a plug at the Product Weekly yesterday. I was like, you guys have done your kickoff calls so the content is in here. What if we just get this content in now on time, and then if there's uncertain, like it, you can then update the content, but it shouldn't, the content in theory shouldn't change that much because it should align with, and this is where I could be misunderstanding part of the process because I'm a newbie too, but I'm imagining that the content of these release post items is generally there with a, for the most part, 90+% should not change, be like evolving a lot because it's already been shared at the kickoff call, right? So that's right. Is that correct or not?
I've experienced that in a few occasions for that to not be true.
Okay.
So maybe mostly true. There are definitely, whether the docs aren't complete yet or engineering, something is still just being figured out right up to the last minute, where I have reviewed content where I've said like, okay, what's part X of it? And the answer has been like, we don't know yet, or that's at risk.
We don't know yet. So yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna, here's the thing. I can look into this a little bit deeper because I'm gonna be very keen on understanding why the PMs aren't hitting the deadline, because there's no point in having a deadline and missing it every time. There's probably a good reason. So I can take that on as an action item because I kind of already have, to be honest with you, and be like, hey, what can we do? Because in my opinion, even if the content was in by 5 business days prior to the release post going live, that would give us enough time to do, whether it's manual or running the automated spell check and link check. And James and I actually, when we talked, we did pull those checklist items further up for the PM manager because we thought that we also had a theory that maybe because it was at the bottom of the stack, it was just getting missed. So we pulled that up to the kind of like the higher part of the checklist. I think he merged that, if I recall correctly. But I think like if PMs are missing the deadline, there's a reason for it. And I feel like there's a way to iterate towards, hey, put your content in. It's better to have to revise it at the nth hour and give the release manager a heads up and flag it, or, you know, somehow that this one's been revised, than having all of them because we're waiting in case something changes rolling in too late. And if there's also, I was thinking if there's like uncertainty about whether it's actually going to even make it into the milestone, you just change the milestone, right? And then it falls out. Find out a way, figure out how we can change the milestone and have it fall out, right? Are you guys following me?
How do you see the best way to follow up on that and to get people to do that?
To do the content? Well, I'm willing to take the charge on that because I brought it up at the Product Weekly yesterday. I said, hey guys, I think like let's try. Then I posted it in the release post channel. And I think what I might do, if you guys think it's a good idea, is I can ping PMs one-on-one and just be like, hey, have you been able to successfully submit your content? And I'm not talking about images or anything else, just at least the content. And if they say yes, great. And if they say no, I'll be like, let's work through it. You said the deadline's on the 10th?
Yeah, the deadline for the content is on the 10th. That's right.
Okay. How do you guys feel about that? I'm happy to like just one-on-one it with PMs and see if we can, because I think we need to learn why at this point we're not making the deadline.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're never going to be able to fix that.
I'm so excited that we get to have you so involved, Farnoosh. This is a true bonus. I love that, and
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here because I think that this process needs a lot of support, and I think we can iterate towards bettering it together. And I'm excited about you, William, because like you're an OG, so I'm definitely going to be hitting you up. Because you've done it so many times. I want to look at this more macro with you. This whole release thing. So we'll do that, we'll take that out of this because it's more macro, not specific. Just like, I think we should look at like the last 6 release posts and see how it's gone together. That'd be cool. But I'll leave that.
Cool. I'll say one thing to the group that is, I don't think we've ever had like a hard deadline where we say, okay, if you don't make this deadline, then it's not in. I don't think we've ever said that, which is why then people don't make the deadline. And my recommendation there is that we don't set that deadline this time because we haven't forecasted that for people. But that would be great for Tracy's post to tell people like,
Yeah.
hey, next month is going to be a hard deadline. If your content's not in, you're not in the release.
Yeah,
It's
and
still,
I think
we could still say the 12th and give a hard deadline. That's still a week away. That gives a week to create that content. We could say if your content is not in by the 12th, it's not in the release post. Too aggressive, you
I
think?
feel like it's too aggressive for this one. You know why? Because it's February 5th and I don't have data for you on why they're missing it. So I think this time we focus on why are you missing it? Let's get it in by the 10th, 12th. And then let's, figure out how we make sure that we really minimize typos and broken URLs, and post and assemble this post more on track than previous posts. And then I think we can, troubleshoot what we learn, and give the deadline, give it a shot. The next one is tough too, because we're at contribute, right? So I think we have to be smart about when we insert the new deadline so that it doesn't freak everyone out. But I love the idea of like, once we feel like our process, maybe it's this next release cycle or the one after, has a real clear and smooth path to enabling PMs to submit their content on time. And then we say, hey, there's this deadline. I think that's a good target for like maybe the April release post, William. Because I'm not going to be consistent, right, throughout the release posts.
You are.
So one of the core problems I think we have scaling up this process is because there's no one consistent participant. So it's hard to iterate. So I think that's going to help. But I love that idea of giving a deadline. I think we just have to be prepared and have everyone be empowered so we don't freak people out.
To that point too, do you also, and I know we have to jump, but do we want to maybe get some sort of like working session or group or anything else together at Contribute, since it's going to be a crazy week? And if we need to get everyone together one place, one time, do we want to kind of schedule something for that?
You mean specifically for that release post or release post
in general? But no, for that release post.
I think that's a great idea because you're going to be part of that. I haven't looked to see who the next PM is going to be, but I think that's a great idea and I'll take a look.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So
right.
Tim, I have a question.
Gotta jump.
Quick question for you, Tim. Are we going to sync up again live like this, or?
What do you all think? I'm happy to. I want to respect everybody's time. Tracy's saying yes on her way out. Yeah. Martin, I feel like.
I like it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think it would be helpful since we do have, a lot of us are doing this for the first time, except for William, who's the salty veteran.
And in total fairness, it evolves very, very quickly. So I can bring some context, but there's a lot I'm learning with you. And so I'm totally up for learning as we go as well.
I say we do it maybe a week from today, Tim, on the 12th, and then we'll see where we're at with content. So I'm really clear on my action item. I'm going to do my best to figure out how to get our PMs to submit their content by the 10th. And if they're not able to, why not? So I can support them on that and we can learn. And then I know you're connecting with James. James has also done this thing where where we can actually now, instead of copying and pasting to assemble the post, I don't know if he's merged it yet or not. He's wrote a little script to basically auto-assemble everything once the content's all in. That's huge, by the way, you guys. That's going to save like 10 hours.
Yeah.
James and Josh and probably Jeremy are the other folks in the company who've done it more than I have.
Yes.
Our resources.
Yeah. So anyway, I think you'll be happy once you sync with James, Tim, because that is huge. Not having to copy and paste to assemble the post and have something just slurp it all up. That's going to save you anywhere from like 5 to like 8 hours of work.
Yeah, perfect. I'm excited. So I'm going to go over that with him. I'll record that session as well so we can share it with the future release post managers. And I'll schedule this meeting either for next Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, depending on people's availability. But for sometime in the middle of next week.
Okay, cool. It sounds great. What else is there anything else on your agenda that we didn't get to? We talked about the copy issue stuff.
I think we talked about everything.
You've got James's stuff, a link to you've already been in there, I think, to his retro, and that retro has links to all the optimization work that he did.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's everything for the agenda. I think for next steps, Farnoosh, you're going to follow up in the Slack channel and with people individually and saying, trying to drive content contribution. I'll do the same. I'll try and like each day, put in a little note and offer help for people who may not know how to do it yet. And then we'll meet again next week when we start to have more content, and as a team we can talk through what are the next steps after that. I think it'd also be helpful for myself to reread both the authorship and release post manager handbook pages, and it's probably true for everybody because it does change. So I'll make sure that ahead of my meeting with James, and certainly ahead of our meeting next week, that I'll be more well versed in that.
That sounds great. And William, thanks for bringing up the actual, template, I think you were saying, versus what's in the handbook might be out of sync. I think that's another really great goal for us, is figuring out at least all the places that the handbook needs to align with that template, and at least capturing all that in MRs for the handbook and fixing it at some point, right? Because if we collect it, then I can drive making sure at least it gets done eventually. So.
Yeah, and we've done that. We do it every release. It like we have as we improve every release, it tends to go. Ideally, it goes into both places, but it tends to go into one. So I anticipate us finding new ones. Yeah, but yeah, totally. Let's keep it in sync.
Okay, awesome. Well, Tim, I'm going to jump into Slack actually, because I already have that post, and loop you in and see if we can get the PMs jamming and talking to us about
this. Great.
This is great, Tim. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I'll reschedule it and look forward to working with you all on this. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.